what do you think which is stronger, the NCAA or the CHL? In your opinion?
Well, I mean, yeah. So it's always very tough to compare. It's two like completely different routes. In terms of level, if you take like the best NCAA teams, guys are like a little older than like in juniors, right?
Yeah.
So like major junior, we play from like 16 to 20. NCAA, like guys are going to play until like 23, 24 sometimes. So just that makes it like a lot stronger. Like guys are just like physically stronger. So we played actually when I was at McGill, every like preseason or during Christmas, we would go to the States and play against NCAA teams, just like exhibition games. And that level is very comparable. So we had some we played my first year. We played against Quinnipiac as just a year after they won the Frozen Four. That was 2016, I guess. We played them. I think it was like a 2-1 game or like very close game. So like the good university teams in Canada, whenever we go and play the NCAA, it's a pretty like even matchup. But yeah, compared to the Q, like the main difference is I would say the Q is sort of a fast track to getting to pro. NCAA is more of like a longer development path. Both are great. It's honestly really hard. I think it depends a lot on the player in terms of like development.
Yeah. I in all honesty, Anthony, that's a great question because I'm going to just take the Montreal Canadiens organization and whoever else, if you guys want to jump in on this, but there's always that whole debate, especially with this team and their prospects. It's like, what's good for their development in a sense. So, we look at guys like I'll take the latest guys. I'll take like Arbor Jack guy and Caden Gooley, who were like amazing in junior. And then there's always that question, well, like are they going to be good enough to make the NHL? And you see that they're able to because they're the quote unquote the older guy in the league. So they're in that sense they're a man playing against boys, right? Then you ask the question of like, but what about a player or smaller players of guys like Cole Caulfield? But like, look what he did with Wisconsin. He scoring over 30 goals and winning the Hobey Baker and being only 5 foot. What, he was 5'7", 5'8" at that time. He was still a kid, still a growing boy. Now we're seeing what Lane Hudson is doing with Boston University, and like you said, he's doing this against actual men, physically mature hockey players, and he's able to dominate and be considered one of the best, at least one of the best defensemen in the league. So I like to think that there's some people out there, they have this misconception that even if you're small, like you're not going to develop properly and be ready for the NHL. But I look at like what Cole Caulfield did. Now I'm looking at what Lane Hudson did at that age and who his opponents are. I'm not too worried about a prospect like Lane Hudson. So to me, the way I see it is like I feel like lately, the last couple of years, like the NCAA has really taken a whole other level in terms of developing players. And majority of them, they're becoming stars. They have potential to be superstars. I mean, a lot of them are in the top 5. Like if you look at the last drafts, you look at Adam Fantilli, he was another Hobey Baker winner. You look, Macklin Celebrini is going to be, he's projected the first overall pick. And, obviously you had a guy like Jack Eichel going number 2 and all that. So I get the sense that like Habs fans, they're so used to the Quebec Major Junior and a bit of the CHL that like they're only looking at NCAA unless it's maybe these 1 or 2 players that are coming out. Like I said, Cole Caulfield, Lane Hudson, and goalie Jacob Fowler. But I think their development in the NCAA goes a long way. And my personal opinion is that I think they might have a better chance of sustaining a long-term career in the NHL versus, I don't know. I'm gonna give. I'll throw in a name like maybe a guy like maybe Philip Massar, who's a prospect for the Canadiens, or maybe even Florian Jackeye, who's Arbor Jackeye's younger brother. Him too, at the age of 20, he's dominating right now because he's playing against 16, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. So I don't know if you guys agree with me, disagree with me, or
I do. I think the NCAA. I'm not going to say the route of it, but NCAA lately to me is I wouldn't say more popular, but I'm hearing more about prospects that are going there that have the likelihood of being able to sustain maybe a longer career. Especially playing against men compared to again, we do it for the Habs really, and lately I've been paying attention as myself more to NCAA, and I've been like you said, Sam, and I've been impressed with what our guys are doing against older men. Whereas if you look at what you're mentioning, Massar, I mean, maybe not Massar, but more like Jack.
Throwing Owen Beck in there too. He's having a great year, but him too. He's one of the older ones.
So you don't know how these guys are might be. I'm a little more skeptical of how they would be in the NHL sense if they were to make it, as opposed to I think we might see more success out of the guys that have been coming into the NCAA lately. I don't know. For myself, I've been paying attention more to that, and I've liked the way development has been more in the NCAA lately compared to, let's say, other leagues. And we're talking about the CHL and the Q and all that. So maybe it could be the top prospects we have, but I really like it when, like Alex mentioned about the way the league is. It's older, it's a lot more physical. You get used to it, right? Yeah. And at a younger age, so when you come to the NHL, you're ready to go. So I don't know. I've been more paying attention to NCAA with that lately.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Alex?
Yeah, well, I mean, the age difference definitely makes a big difference. Like you have definitely, as we've been mentioning, like a lot older guys playing in the NCAA. I think one thing in Canada, I think that in terms of development, we need to, I think, reconsider the way we're doing it. Is we have the U Sports, which is university sport, that isn't promoted enough. Clearly, I think. I mean, we all know in like the last couple of years, we've seen it. Like hockey is a late development sport. We see it with the players we work with Quick Feet. It takes a long time to develop. I mean, obviously, you always have like the superstars, and like, I mean, I love what Slavkovsky's doing, and like he's been doing great, and like, but there's one every year, right? Those are exceptions, and I think for these players too, like a route like the CHL is a really interesting route because you have the volume of games, right? Like back when I was playing the Q, I don't know how it is nowadays, but back when I was playing, you play 70 games in a season, plus like, you know, like 8 to 10 games preseason, depending how many of those you would play. And then if you make it far into the playoffs, I mean, you get close to 100 games, which is very close to what like they're playing in the show. Whereas in the NCAA, like the volume of games is lower, but there's a lot of emphasis being put on development, obviously, and like I think you also have more time. But again, going back to what I've been saying, I think the U Sport, I think we're going to see more and more players come out of the U Sport. So transition from like the QMJHL or the CHL in general, and then transition to like the U Sport, and then go pro after that. Just because, I mean, guys are going to get like, you get a degree there. The league is amazing. Like teams are really good and getting really competitive. I mean, you've probably heard about UNB going perfect season this year. Their program is insane. I mean, I have a bunch of friends I played with that ended up playing there as well, like after juniors, and the program is great. And there's, as I said, McGill, all the programs in Quebec, the programs in Ontario and in the West are doing better and better every year as well. And like the caliber of players that are coming out that are going there is very high. So I wouldn't be surprised if like through the years there's a lot more emphasis being put by scouts and like looking at these programs as well, especially that like guys, I mean, we start playing there, like I started at 21 and you play until you're 26. You have a pretty good idea by then if you like what type of hockey player you are, and you have a really good background too, and a lot of years to develop, right?
That's actually a very good point you mentioned, though, and it could be now that I actually think about it, the advantage of playing the CHL is that you get a lot more reps than the NCAA. So you do play a lot more games, and you just basically focus on that. Whereas NCAA, they have to focus on school too, but like they get a lot of time to practice, develop, and all that. So at the end of the day, I think it just comes down. It should come down to the player, and like everybody's got their own skill level, but it comes down to the work ethic and how much they really want it.